Okay, g'day everyone. Bit of different content today. Today I'm going to be going through essentially exercises on a tier list, trying to talk about which exercises are the best for powerlifting or strength development. And you'll notice that that's obviously going to be a fair bit of the bias into how I rate these exercises. The other thing that will pop up is I'll be talking about some of these exercises in regards to rehab and osteopathy, or rather just how they relate to people who have injuries and are trying to get back to moving better, and I guess how they fit into a holistic lifestyle overall, right? If you want to call it functionality, you're welcome to call it that too. It's just too broad of a term for me. I try and avoid that word, but essentially exercises that are good for your well-being, right? This is the list, pretty simple. This is normally said D. I just changed it to F. I just felt like, what's the defining difference between a C and a D? It starts to get a bit hairy down the bottom. So I just sort of thought, okay, S, best tier of exercise, A, B, C, and F, meaning like no exercise is truly an F probably, but also I feel like there'll be some exercises that are a bit less impactful than others, right? Especially when it comes to powerlifting. So and for some reason, I randomized these, but probably one of the most important ones has come up first. So to start off, deadlifts. This is probably a no-brainer, but this is automatically going to the top of S tier. Beyond the fact that obviously in a powerlifting competition you must do it, therefore it's something you had better train and practice. Beyond the fact that it has that component to it, deadlifts are incredible. Their ability to train multiple movement patterns in one, in the sense of it can work your hips, it can work your knees, it can work your back, it can work your shoulders. It is an incredible exercise. In terms of overall, I guess, development of strength and spinal robustness and overall, resilience through tissues, deadlifts is one of the top tier. A lot of people get scared about deadlifts injury-wise. I think it's unfounded. I think whenever you are taught how to do them, whenever you are shown, technique, whenever you are shown how to actually do deadlifts, and you're then also being programmed deadlifts in a way that, carefully increases weights over time, I don't think the injury risk here is any different to any other exercise, if I'm honest. In fact, I'd probably end up finding I get more people saying they get pain with squats or something else. There's a whole bunch of other exercises that I think seem to be more provocative for people than deadlifts. There's so many ways you can revert them too. If they are painful for whatever reason, you can go to a trap bar, you can make the platforms higher and do some rack pulls. There's so many different ways to alter how you train deadlifts. You can do some tempoed deadlifts, some pause deadlifts below the knee, just off the floor. They are such a good exercise for so many reasons. If you wanted to make an argument that bodybuilding wise or hypertrophy wise they're not the best, sure, there's definitely better ones in terms of posterior chain development. But even in a bodybuilding program, you could very easily have deadlifts in here. It would just be a case of you're not trying to fatigue yourself, for the rest of your training, so you probably wouldn't go as high percentage reps, but like intensity, so you probably keep it to 70% and just run like maybe a set of 8 or something like that. There's different options to do it, but essentially deadlifts are key. They're king. This is obviously talking about conventional. If you do sumo, you are a idiot. No, I'm kidding. That's how a non-lifter would think. Sumos are amazing. Dumbbell shoulder press. Dumbbell shoulder press is a very good movement. In this picture here, it looks like she has a back support here. Back support or non-back support are both great. Obviously, if you take away the back support, there's an extra element of, I guess you would say, core control involved, or stability, or whatever you want to refer to it as. You can change the angles of where you're pressing. A true dumbbell shoulder press, I believe, is technically all the way out at that 90 degrees, but overhead pressing has great benefits towards bench pressing. Any overhead movements are incredible in any program for a powerlifter or Gen Pop person. A lot of the times people complain about their shoulders when they're in this position and or overhead. So training these movements is important to overall shoulder health and function. So I think this is a really important exercise. In regards to powerlifting, I don't think I'd put it S tier. The only reason why is I think you're limited into how hard you can push this exercise because of stability demands, which is totally okay. Not everything needs to be the most stable exercise to be beneficial, but I'd argue that a machine or a pin-loaded shoulder press might work better in terms of, loading up to appropriate weights for some of the top-end athletes. But in terms of overall function and the actual movement itself, super beneficial. Deltoid strength helps pressing big time. You can change how you angle your back to also work on thoracic extension. Great exercise. For now, I have to put that in an A tier. We'll see if I change that, but I don't think it's S tier. I think it's going to be A tier, and I think it's a very good addition to A tier. These two are very similar but different. Knee raises and hanging leg raises. I'm going to assume that literally the only difference here is these are like hanging knee raises, these are hanging leg raises. I'm going to assume. They are slightly different. A hanging knee raise is going to be a little bit more of a hip flexion dominant task, as opposed to a hanging leg raise, which is going to be a little bit more like abdominal focused, with actual truncal flexion. For me, a hanging knee raise is like, it's a good hip flexor drill. I just wouldn't say it's great. And again, the reason why is you can't really progress it much further. Like, you can progress reps and sets. I guess you could even include, longer eccentrics, and change tempo, intensity, that kind of stuff. But it's very hard to weight these. And if you're training hip flexor related stuff, there's probably some other things that you could sort of do to train this a little bit better. I just prefer some isometrics off the bench as well too, which I might be able to run through one day. Good exercise, not great. In terms of powerlifting, I don't think they serve as much of a purpose. I will put this down in a C tier for now. The hanging leg raise, however, is a little bit different because that's a little bit more ab focused, a little bit more truncal flexion related. And you're in a really large range of motion when you're doing these. If you haven't done these for your abs, you should think about trying them because they're in my opinion, they provide much more stimulus than a crunch or a sit-up or a plank or even a kneeling cable crunch does. I like them as well too because when you're going through that full range of motion with the legs straight out, you are increasing a lot of demand on flexion, but also when you come back down, you're going into some thoracic extension on the way back. So it's a great way again to just implement thoracic and lumbar movement into a spine. Really good at lengthening the abs, getting them nice and long in terms of range of motion training. I think they're really good. You can make an argument how much are abs relevant in regards to powerlifting. I think they play a role. I think you could argue that no matter what, for someone who is doing these movements, they're going to be beneficial again to how they move and how they use their spine. So for me, I'm definitely going to put this above the knee raises. I think they have more validity to them. And again, this list is biased. Like, this is my personal preferences when it comes to coaching currently. So this may change over time. I'm not shitting on knee raises. They're a perfectly fine movement. Every movement can be extremely valuable for anyone depending on the context. Put it that way, right? Just find that more often than not, there's better ways to get hip flexor work than knee raises. But hanging leg raises are up there for me in terms of abs. It's on the cusp actually between A and B. I'll put it there. Incline dumbbell bench press. I do like inclines. I think inclines are nice. I do think, they help with a different angle. They can be nicer on shoulders that are a bit grumpy. If you've had some issue with bench press, either barbell or dumbbell, sometimes moving to an incline can feel a hell of a lot nicer for shoulders. There's still a hell of a lot of stimulation through pectorals and triceps when you're doing this. Just a slight added addition to a little bit more delts because you've got an incline. If you think about the curve, if you're seated, dumbbell shoulder press is delts, and your flat bench is going to be more pecs. Somewhere in the middle is a little bit of both. Rough estimate. I do like them. I almost feel like, again, depending on the person, you'd almost rather do dumbbell incline. But you can make a solid argument that if you want to include some dumbbell pressing work for stability or whatever, it's a good way to add some that isn't just the same as like dumbbell bench press. Because if you've already got bench press in a powerlifting program, which you probably do, is it redundant to also have dumbbell bench press in there? Maybe not. Depends on how you word it. It can just be a nice little different variation for a pressing movement. I don't mind it. I really don't mind it. I'm struggling to think about where I put it. I think I'm going to put it in A tier for now because it's so flexible in terms of how you use it. But I don't think it's going to be high A tier. I think it's going to get pushed towards the edge of A, B. But I do think it's got a lot of validity in how you use it. It can contribute a lot to pressing strength. And again, the dumbbells are so easily changed. There's a lot of ways to progress it. Again, eccentric control, concentric control, improve thoracic extension by arching into the back. You can even work on some leg drive, funnily enough. It's not bad. It's pretty good. I'll put it in A. I think that's fair. Lunges. I don't think this has got any different forms of lunges. So we're going to do lunges as a whole. Lunges as a whole are probably going to be an S tier movement for me straight off the bat. I don't know if that will surprise people or not. The reason why is, again, there's so many ways that you can do lunges. You can do regular walking lunges. You can do Bulgarian split lunges where the rear foot is, elevated on a bench behind you or an instrument, like one of those rollers. You can do front foot elevated split squats or lunges as well too, to really work on the depth in the front leg. Technically, you can do like Cossack lunges, which are out to the side to work adductors as well too. Lunges are a GOAT tier exercise. They're really good. In fact, I'm not going to put them over deadlifts, but I might actually end up putting them over another exercise that'll come up here soon. That one might surprise people. But lunges, in terms of strength development, single leg work, it's some of the best you can possibly do. You can overload it in so many ways, whether it be heavy dumbbells. You can use an SSB, like a safety squat bar, to really overload the amount of weight on your back while you're doing these. You can use kettlebells and go walking lunges. You can do, there's so many things you can do. A lunge is a very staple movement for rehab and life and functionality. It's one of the big ones I focus on some of my elderly clients with, because if you imagine falling down, when you're actually down on the ground, how do you get back up again? Usually you have to roll onto one leg, grab something nearby and help yourself back up, right? If you don't have the strength to get up onto one leg and push yourself up with one leg, you're going to have a really hard time getting up off the ground. So again, when we think about longevity and it comes down to the elderly population, if you are a really good single leg strength person and you're really good with lunges, you're not going to have a hard time if you're on the ground getting up. And again, for the young athletic powerlifting population, that might not be as relevant, but I'm telling you, for just about everyone else, this is one of those exercises that the functionality and the carryover benefit that it has is almost unparalleled to anything else in the gym. I don't think there's anyone I coach who doesn't have some form of lunge. And they suck. They hurt. They're really good. They're hard. They really get your heart rate up. They do a lot of things. They're a staple. They need to be a staple in your programming, with very few exceptions. very few exceptions. I think that's probably going to be one of the top exercises I have on this list, actually, and that might be a surprise. I don't know what people think, but to me, a lunge is just a key movement. So it's up there. It's up there, man. I love lunges. Bloody hurt. I've been doing some Bulgarians lately, and they are killing my glutes. Lat pulldowns. Lat pulldowns are a classic. I love lat pulldowns as well too. Again, they are so easy to, the pin-loaded ones. Not many people can usually max out a stack of lat pulldowns with nice form. So you can usually, it's a safe bet that someone will get benefit out of lat pulldowns, especially if you've also got one of those pin-loaded ones where you can put the pin in and then put a plate on top of the pin as well too, because then you can overload it even further if you do get to the bottom of the stack. But again, the large majority of people won't get to a bottom of a stack of a lat pull down with good form. And again, even if they do, usually you can up some reps or slow the eccentric down, and it will fry them. Lat pull downs are great with overhead because they're overhead pull movements. But again, you can use the eccentric when you're coming back up. Sorry, my camera's flipped. When you're coming back up to really get a nice stretch out of lats and thoracic spine through there. So again, for someone who's quite compressed thoracically or with their rib cage, you can really get them feeling quite open using lat pull downs. So for me, I use a lot of lat pull downs with my clients as well too. Do I think there's better lat movements? Yeah, I think so. I think T-bar rows are probably a little bit better. Even just like heavy single arm dumbbell rows are probably going to be maybe a little bit more beneficial in terms of actual strength through the lats. But in regards to functionality, I think they're just about a top tier for a shoulder movement as well too. The amount of scap movement you also get in that kind of thing and scap control is huge, and the translation to bench press is huge too. So lat pull downs have to go A tier. For me, I talked more highly about them than incline dumbbell bench. Do I like them more than dumbbell shoulder press? I don't know if I do, because I think that pressing movements in general are underdone in the population. So I feel like a lot of people are a little bit hesitant with pressing movements more than pulling movements. I think I'm going to keep that there for now. We'll see. Leg press is amazing. Leg press for me probably needs to be an S tier movement. It'll probably be a bottom of S tier movement, but it needs to be S tier. Again, why? The reason why is because, again, it is a great accessory movement to helping someone squat. So if you're a power lifter, it is a great accessory motion because it allows you to work on very high end range strength, but without the same balance fatigue aspect that comes in with a squat, right? Usually one of the first things that'll fail on a squat won't really be your leg strength. It'll probably be how you're actually bracing through the upper torso to hold the barbell on your back. So a leg press is a great way around that, because a leg press will allow you to essentially remove that component completely, lean into the back of the backrest, and just focus more on the leg strength again too. So in regards to like overloading the legs, it's a great way to do so. If someone's dealing with a back injury, it can be an excellent way to actually give them a more stable base to actually work on their leg strength without like aggravating their back, so they're not actually losing some of that training in their legs. For someone who doesn't have confidence in a squat movement or is coming back from a surgery kind of thing, a very light or unloaded leg press is a great way to actually just start to feel yourself pressing and using your knees again too. It's got to be up there for me. It's useful in all the population. It's a fun one where people feel safe that they will actually press it. Like you'll hear people brag about their leg press, Not many people do that with other exercises. People do that with deadlift, squat, bench. But not many people talk about I hear people talk about their leg press. People come up to me and say, I can do 200 on a leg press. And it's like, it's one of the few other exercises that people really love bragging about how much they do, which I'm all for. It's interesting that one's translated into Gen Pop. So for me, leg press has to be up there. It's so functional in regards to rehab. It's so functional in regards to powerlifting. It is a really high quality movement. Is it my favorite leg movement one? I actually don't think. Pendulums aren't in here. Pendulum squats aren't in here. If pendulum squats were here, I might have pendulums. Oh, I'd have pendulums over leg press in regards to powerlifting, but I wouldn't have them over it in regards to like rehab gen pop. So leg press is a really cool movement. Leg press is a really cool movement. Bench press. Okay, here we go. Here's the one that I think will surprise some people. So bench press is obviously going to be S tier, because obviously it's a competition exercise, much like deadlifts are. The thing that might surprise people here is I'm actually going to put bench press behind lunges. Why? It is very important to work on your pressing strength. Pressing strength, shoulder strength is very, very important in regards to overall health, overall movement, and how you feel as well too. Bench press is a fun exercise. It's another one that you like to put weight on, and it's a really fun one to actually feel and brag about being good at. The reason why I don't put this as high as lunges and deadlifts is because you don't need to do a barbell bench press. Put it that way. If you for some reason really struggled with technique or form, one, contact a coach and learn how to do it better. But secondly, let's say for injury or comfort's sake or something, right? You could very easily swap this out for a dumbbell bench press and you're still getting that pressing strength, right? You can make that argument for some other of these things as well too, like at deadlifts. But like for me, I just don't think the carryover for a bench press is as relevant to life as a lunge or a deadlift is. Like, because they're enormous in terms of like overall life function. They are enormous. Whereas bench press, it's like pressing strength is still very important, how you move through the shoulder, how you move through the upper back. But I think you could use other exercises to achieve this as well too, more so. It almost makes me want to put leg press in front of it, but I'm not going to do it because I'm also factoring in the powerlifting component of it. And technically leg press, you could swap leg press out for hack squats, pendulums and all that. So I'll keep it where it is. But yeah, I actually think bench press, again, as good as an exercise as bench press is, and definitely my second favorite exercise, I think it needs to be behind lunges in the S tier for this reason. That I don't know. People might agree with me. They might not. But I think there's more ways that you can train upper body pressing movements than just bench press. And I think that this, even though it's a great exercise, I think you can make an argument that it doesn't need to be above lunges, just in terms of life and for gen pop. Military press, like standing overhead press, hard exercise, hard to get good at. Again, a similar vein to dumbbell shoulder press. Overhead pressing is very important for overall health of the shoulders and shoulder blades and even thoracic spine and even neck, you could argue too. This is just a harder movement. Again, in terms of powerlifting component, I think it's a really cool one. I think it is cool to get good at a military press. I think overhead pressing is valuable for bench pressing strength and overall pressing strength in general. Again, you can make a good argument that the neurological fatigue you pick up in a true heavy barbell overhead press might eat into the programming of a bench press over time. So you can make an argument that it's probably not as important as this, and that a dumbbell shoulder press or even a Smith machine shoulder press might be a better case usage because there's slightly less of that whole actual spinal, work sort of going on. I do still think it's a very useful exercise. It's incredible for strength. It is incredible for strength. Do I give it to many people? No, if I'm honest. I tend to find I will use a Smith machine or dumbbell shoulder press instead. I'm going to put it in a top B tier exercise. And it might be a bit rough. Because again, I think the strength component of this, you could argue that becomes an S tier. You could make that argument. I wouldn't disagree. But I think in regards to the amount of people that I program it for, and the amount of people who like this movement, and the amount of people who can actually progress on this movement, it's pretty limited. and progress on it without it eating into the fatigue of a bench press or something else is pretty limited. So I'm gonna have it down there because I think that some of these other options allow for more stability and allow for more gradual progression over time without the same fatigue. Because I tend to find that, again, this needs to be another movement that needs to be coached to feel good. So yeah, I'll put it in B. I'm guessing this is bent over barbell rows. Bent over barbell rows. Probably an interesting one, but I'm going to put this in C for now. The reason why bent over barbell row, I mean, rows are good. There's nothing wrong with a row by any means. I find that, again, when you start to get to really high levels of strength, finding an appropriate amount of weight to do a bent over barbell row is actually quite hard. The amount of extra strain that you have on your lower back to actually, contract the core and hold the breathing and bracing while you're in this position and keeping a nice, spinal position to actually maximize lat engagement is really hard. It's fine at weights, you're maybe up to 60 kilos or so, but it does start to get quite tricky. And you almost would rather do, like I said, a T-bar row where you've got a barbell that's sitting on the front of your chest there to actually give you some support so you don't need to actively hold yourself up as much. Then it allows you to just think about the actual pressing and you can use your back a little bit more without the worrying of like the whole way too much, trunk flexion. It's not a bad exercise. It's a good one. It's fine for hypertrophy. It is fine for strength too in the experienced lifter. I just find that you probably will cap it out a bit quicker and you'll probably get more out of a T-bar row a lot sooner than you would a bent over barbell row. And I don't even find, because you start to get limited by your hips there, like I would argue a lot of people actually struggle to get that really deep range of motion too. Yeah, I actually don't really love that exercise at all. I think C is pretty fair for it, if I'm honest. I don't program that at all. I don't program any bent over barbells for any of my clients. That's not to say it's a bad exercise, like I said, but it's just to say that I think there's better options. I think there's better options today. Planks. Planks are a funny exercise. Everyone hates them. Fair enough. I don't mind planks. I think they serve a good purpose in regards to rehab and lumbopelvic control. I think they're a staple in the sense of a lot of people know what they are / how to do them. So there's a low barrier of entry for people when they're actually starting the gym. Do I think they're a good exercise? They're not bad. I don't think they do as much like in terms of ab development as people think they do. Obviously, you feel that burn, right? You feel that tension while you're doing them. So there's stimulation of the abdominals and the core musculature and holding your lumbar position. But I don't think it's doing as much as people think. I think it does serve well as like a general prep thing. Like before a session, you can do some planks to actually get your core, firing or whatever you want to call it, before a deadlift or a squat or something like that. Side planks will fall into the same category. Like I think that they're great for some low back rehab purposes as well too. But are they a staple for an exercise? I wouldn't say so. But they have purpose. They have purpose. I'll put them there. I'm going to put them in high C tier because they're not better than hanging leg raises for me. The range of motion you get on a hanging leg raise for the ab stimulation you get is so much better than this. I might even argue that is better than a military press. No. The strength-wise, military press is fine. No, I'll stop that. But yeah, I planks aren't better than hanging leg raises for me. They are not. They serve a different purpose. They're good. They're useful. It's a low barrier of entry. A lot of people can do them. You can get some ab stimulation in just about anyone. They are useful, and I do program them. Unlike the other two here, I don't really program them. I do program some planks. I just don't think they have the same validity to a lot of other training that the hanging leg raises can and do, right? Pull-ups. Pull-ups are cool. Pull-ups are hard though. Pull-ups are very hard. So I guess in this we'll include machine-assisted pull-ups, we'll include band-assisted pull-ups, and weighted pull-ups as well too. Pull-ups are really good, really good exercises, right? In regards to powerlifting, they are incredible for actually creating high level pulling power through the upper body in that overhead, like, arms kind of extended position. Very few can match what it actually does, right? You could say, lat pull down kind of does a pull up, and it does, but it also doesn't have the same core component that, you're controlling through your whole body while you're actually doing it too. A weighted pull up is so hard. I was doing some earlier this year and they were smoking my lats. The pump I was having was just insane. They're good fun. They are good fun. The barrier of starting them is pretty hard. Like the beginner athlete is going to really struggle with pull-ups unless there's a machine-assisted one. So it kind of becomes an end stage rehab, end stage training movement. But the strength that you can get from them when you get really good at them is pretty wild. And again, you can control eccentrics, you can do AMRAPs, you can weight them and go high weight, like high intensity, low rep schemes with pull-ups as well too. I'm gonna put pull-ups into really high B. I think that's fair. If you said A or S, I wouldn't argue, but I'm going to put it there because I think that not everyone can actually get the true benefit of a pull-up, and it actually takes some time to actually get better at learning how to use them. I think that's a fair placement. But I do think if you're a power lifter and you haven't tried some weighted pull-ups, you should, because the benefit you'll get from them is just wild. So they're still very, very useful. I do program them. But again, I program them in my lifters who have had some form of experience with them before, because they're not beginner friendly. They're not beginner friendly, put it that way, for most people. Push-ups. The antithesis of a pull-up. Actually, that would be a push-down, I guess. Push-ups are a low barrier entry movement. You can regress them against a wall, into an angle, into a flat push-up, into a decline push-up. There's a lot of variations you can do with hands to stimulate either more pectorals, more triceps, more whatever. I think you can do plyometric push-ups to help develop some like force rate development into the upper body. Rate force development, either way. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They're good. They're very good. You can do weighted push-ups in the sense of someone puts some dumbbells, like a plate on your back. Just a bit of a mess around trying to get someone to put it on your back. It's fine, but I don't know. I also don't like to ask people for help when I'm in the gym sometimes, which is stubborn. Don't do what I do. But I think they're a good exercise. I think they're a great exercise. I think I might be being a bit harsh on them. I think they're so functional. You can do them wherever. They're a good one to program for rehab strength because it's literally no equipment, no nothing. You just can do them, which is like a top tier, functional kind of thing. In regards to push-ups, everyone knows what push-ups are. So again, it's very simple. Like, even in the older population, getting someone to aim to be able to do 10 push-ups is a great goal, and a great sign of longevity. There's some studies being done about, the amount of push-ups you can do being a sign as to like your longevity and the amount of like how long you'll live. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool study. I'm going to put push-ups above pull-ups, actually. Ooh, or am I? Oh, actually, now this is a good question. Maybe I'll put it just behind pull-ups. And the only reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to weight it in the sense of pull-ups are more useful powerlifting-wise end stage, whereas push-ups I feel like become a little bit redundant when you start to get to end stage powerlifting. When you're actually a powerlifter who has been training for a while, push-ups are nice, but to get any sort of effect from an unweighted push-up, you're looking at sets of 30, probably minimum. It may be different, like I'm probably more focused on males there. Females probably less, but the difference there is pretty wild. Like it drops off pretty quickly in terms of how much stimulus it gives you. It's a great, if you want to call it an end of session, pump or burner or something like that. It has some good purpose. I still think it's very useful. I do program push-ups for people who are relatively new to the gym because, again, it doesn't take much to do. Sometimes it's one of those easy ones that you can superset it with something. You can superset it with a lat pull down and you'll walk away and just go, holy crap, I can feel my entire upper body. I feel like I've had a great workout. So I do put it in for people. But end stage powerlifting, strength development, I think it becomes a little bit redundant because you can get so much more out of a bench press, out of dumbbell presses, out of, chest press machines, out of everything, right? So not bad, just not amazing either, put it that way. Tricep overhead press. They're using a dumbbell and then they've got a backrest there on a bench there. I love this exercise. Overhead tricep work is amazing. Again, we've talked about overhead movements in general so much, but it's a really important function of the shoulders that does get missing in gen pop. People who aren't active do struggle with overhead movements and strength of any kind, so it's a really good movement to have for just about anyone. End stage powerlifting related training, I would say that people probably struggle to get an appropriate amount of load through this, especially in this bench supported, with a dumbbell, because at some point when you get ridiculously strong, 50 kilos, tricep pressing with both hands isn't that hard versus actually getting the 50 kilos up and over the bench and actually doing them. So at some point, it probably becomes a case of, okay, you go to one of those V-bar attachments and you do it on a cable machine, and it's probably a hell of a lot better just standing up by yourself and actually doing it that way. I think that way is a little bit more progressible and therefore a better exercise. But I guess that we'll put that into the same thing. We'll lump them in together because it's not going to be separate. So if you're going off, the cable component as well too, it's a pretty damn good exercise for the triceps in that overhead position. It really hits triceps in that long range through there too, so you get a hell of a lot of stimulation all the way down to the triceps. I am going to say it's a pretty damn good exercise. I'm going to put it in an A tier. But that's on the caveat that it includes the cable function, because the dumbbell option alone, I almost would probably have it down here. But if you include the cable function, the cable overhead, I think that makes it an A tier for sure. I think it's progressible, regressible. I think it has a lot of benefit. Single arm dumbbell row. I love single arm dumbbell rows. I talked about this already. I don't think we've talked about rows at all yet. That might be coming up. Maybe not. Maybe not. That's interesting. It doesn't have rows in here. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to include rows in general in here. If we're including rows in general, I'm going to put this in S. The reason why this goes into an S is because in regards to, I think this is, again, a low barrier entry movement. I think a lot of people can do this at any weight. I think it is well tolerated on the back, especially this bench version, because you've got a lot of stable base of support for stability, so it doesn't seem to bother back or hips that much. You can change the angle of where you're rowing from this close to the body to a more wider abducted area as well too, to change different parts of the shoulder and lats and how you're focusing more posterior delt / scap control versus more total lat engagement. You can use it in rehab. If you include a T-bar row into this, T-bar rows are probably one of my favorites in terms of overall strength development through lats as well too. The carryover to bench is insane. You could make an argument the carryover to deadlifts is there too. I'd argue probably not as much as you'd think, but a staple still of just your overall strength of the shoulders and upper back. I think this has to be an S tier movement. It's definitely better than a dumbbell shoulder press for me. I think rowing motions are extremely important. You know, that upper body pull is an extremely important function. And I don't think there's many better options to actually achieve this than some dumbbell rows or, you know, single arm dumbbell rows, cable rows or T-bar rows. I think there's so many functions that you can do with rows that it is a top tier exercise. It's in every program I have, bar none. Bar none. It is great. Sit-ups. Oh, wonderful. Sit-ups are hard, obviously. Sit-ups are fine. Again, a low barrier entry movement, much like a push-up or, you know, like a push-up. Most people need someone or something holding their feet to actually be able to do this. So again, if you don't actually have something, it can be a hard exercise to make work, funnily enough. It is obviously very good at trunk flexion. You will get some hip flexion involvement as well too. A lot of people will actually feel their hip flexors like a rec fem or a psoas actually working, even though they're trying to actually get their abs and get their six-pack ready for summer. Hot girl summer, by the way, hot girl summer. I do like it. I think it's a good movement again for someone trying to get that stimulation through there. Strength-related stuff, nah, it's nowhere near as good as a hanging leg raise. Nowhere near as good to me. You could progress sit-ups a little bit. Like if we included crunches in this, and then therefore we included like cable crunches. Cable crunches are pretty useful, but again, like I just think you get more range of motion. You definitely get more range of motion out of a hanging leg raise. And I feel like it's one of those movements that we probably don't need to have weighted up as much. Like we could probably just sort of add more reps, more sets, or more control to a hanging leg raise and have more benefit as opposed to, you know, decreasing the stack on a cable crunch. You know, and I'm including that in the sit-ups. Sit-ups themselves are pretty limited in how much we can progress them or even regress them. Like they're a tricky movement, right? But the low barrier of entry is nice. People know what they are. People are aware of them. They're handy. I'll put it that way. I just don't think they're as crucial as people think. I don't even think they're as crucial as planks. I probably will have it over a hanging knee raise, but I think I'd keep them there. I don't think I'd put them any further than that. I think that's fair. They're a good exercise, but they're just limited in how much you can progress them. I think that's fair. Skullcrushers. It's like a old school Ziz Arnold blueprint kind of exercise. You don't see many people doing Skullcrushers these days. We need to bring back Skullcrushers. They're a cool exercise, man. Skullcrushers for me are often not done very well. You are again often limited by how heavy you can have the easy bar or barbell or whatever you use to actually get yourself into that position and then do it. They can be tough on the wrists, which is why I would wear like a wrist wrap or something if you're going to do heavy, just so that you can focus on the triceps, not your wrists as much. I feel like the mess around with setting them up makes them not worth it comparatively to a tricep overhead press or a cable tricep overhead, press. They're still fine. They're still great. Triceps are important. I use more pullovers in regards to like this kind of positioning stuff because you can get some great thoracic extension out of it. But again, the overhead, like the tricep work of a long range tricep work is pretty invaluable for strength. I just find that so many people struggle with this movement. I'm going to put them above a bent over barbell, but below a plank. You could argue that, don't get me wrong, they're great for hypertrophy, they're great for a whole bunch of other reasons. Again, no exercise is bad. I just think there's better options available to you for overhead tricep work than a skull crusher. So I'll put it there. And plank has more validity in regards to rehab and low barrier of entry. This is a high barrier entry movement. Like this takes a lot of coordination. You'll be surprised how many people cannot do this movement. Like you'll teach them and they'll be doing something completely random. So I think this is fair. Squats. Okay, squats. This is obviously going to be an S tier movement again too, especially powerlifting wise. It's comp specific, it needs to be in the S tier. You must be doing it if you're doing powerlifting, in some form. You must be doing some form of squats. Squats in general are incredible for real life, getting up out of a chair, getting up from a seated position. They are so beneficial in so many ranges of motion. My argument that I'm having right now in my own brain is whether I want them over lunges or lunges over squats. No, I think because of the amount that you can, I think I'll go squat. Sorry, I'll go squats over. Bloody hell! There we go. Over lunges. I think squats serve a good purpose, a good base of support before we move to lunges. So if you've got someone who's very acute in pain, a lunge is probably going to be really hard. Someone who's dealing with an SIJ issue or a disc issue might find lunges and the instability that the single leg movement does a little bit too challenging at first. And the regression of a lunge, if you can't do a single leg movement, is to go to a double leg movement, which is a squat. So for me, a squat therefore must be better than a lunge. That's my reasoning I've just come up with now. I think that's probably a pretty fair assessment. I think squats, again, you can regress these so many ways. If someone's having issues with a squat, you can take them to a box squat. If someone's having an issue with a box squat, you can take them to a bodyweight box squat. You know what I mean? There's so many ways that you can get someone. You can do isometric wall sits, which are a squat pattern, I guess you could argue. For me, I think that this is very fair placement. I think it's very close between them and lunges. I think working on a lunge, like if you could do a lunge, let's say hypothetically you have no injuries, you could do, and you have to choose one or the other. And you're not doing powerlifting, I choose lunges. I think the single leg carryover is going to help you with the leg function enough that you won't need squats. But I think theoretically, squats serve a better purpose at being regressed for those who can't do lunges for whatever reason. So I think squats get the tick of approval, and obviously powerlifting wise, there's nothing better for lower leg strength development than a squat. And obviously it's a comp sport, so therefore you must squat, right? So I think those two are probably going to be. I don't think anything else down here is going to come even close to these three. I think these four. I think these four are going to be top tier. Nothing's really going to touch those. They honestly. I wonder if I can. Can I make? Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Just to make it a little bit more confusing, right? Goated. Absolutely goated category. There's your goats of movement. If your program doesn't have some form of deadlift, squat, lunge, bench press, I don't know what program you're doing. I actually have no idea, because the transfer to just about every single sport is wild. I don't know. I can't come up with, in my mind, someone who wouldn't be doing some form of all four of these things. I cannot. Come back to me. I'm sure someone can come up with some niche example, but for me, there must be some element in all of this. Must be. Tricep pull down. Okay, so another tricep exercise. I like these more than Skullcrushers immediately because, again, cable-wise, you can progress these well. A little bit more short head related in regards to tricep. You don't get the full range because you're not going overhead, so you don't quite get the same amount of tricep work that you do as overhead. However, it's still pretty useful to get the short head and still a nice way to actually get triceps. Definitely better than Skullcrushers. Lower barrier to entry, lower learning curve that sort of comes with this movement. Nice supplement for tricep training. Um, where do I have this? I don't have this. I don't have this overhead press, tricep overhead press. I think that that's better. Do I have it over pull-ups? I don't think I do. Do I have it over push-ups? I don't think I do. Do I have it over military press for strength? I don't think I do. I think I have it. I think I have it over hanging leg raises, and that's about it. It's a good exercise, like I said. It's a great one. You can do some isometric work at the bottom range. It can be really nice when you're rehabbing some tricep, tendon injuries and discomforts. Um, it can be nice if for some reason someone's really struggling overhead, comfort wise with shoulder. It can be a great way to work triceps in a more comfortable, shorter range. I just don't think it's as good as overhead press tricep related stuff. And therefore, I think it's probably in a fair position there. I think I'm right. Treadmill. This is going to upset some people. I'm going to take treadmill in a wide scope and think aerobic training, right? Walking, running, whatever. If you want to make an argument that you don't need to have this for a powerlifting program, you're right. I'm not going to argue, right? However, if you go from a holistic standpoint again to aerobic capacity is one of the biggest determinants of longevity, of of health overall, of someone's ability to fight off disease, of someone's ability to resist cardiac events. It is probably one of the top exercises that you can do. There's a low barrier to entry. All you got to do is run or walk, especially walking. Walking is probably the lowest barrier to entry movement you can do. You can do it for rehab. Honestly, some of the most common advice I give for people with disc injuries is walking for rehab. They look at me like I'm like, why am I paying this guy for this information? But it's true. It's true. It's so simple. Treadmill, running training, all that kind of stuff, aerobic training, when combined with resistance training, has something about a 40% decrease in mortality risk. Like, when you combine it with resistance training, it is probably about the best you could get. It really is. People won't want to hear that, but it's true. It really is true. If you actually stop being lazy, don't take that wrong, but it's true, and actually use a treadmill a bit more, it is a top tier exercise. Obviously, strength development, it doesn't really do that much of that. You can use sprint training. You can use a whole bunch of different trainings like fartleks to help with running training. But it is technically, I guess you would argue, a different subset of the sport. However, the carryover from cardio training, aerobic in performance to weight training is palpable. It's real. It's not fake. It does actually help you deal with high rep ranges of this other stuff for hypertrophy. Where does it go is really tricky. I think it's probably very fair for me to actually say a treadmill goes in an S tier and it goes above single dumbbell row. That's going to upset so many people. I know it. And I don't give a shit. I really don't care. It is a good exercise, man. It is a good exercise. Fight me on it. But if you can combine some treadmill training with what you're doing, it is so useful for helping, especially in the forms of program where you're doing, hypertrophy or high rep ranges. It helps you deal with it so much more, right? It really does. As with any exercise, some people say, oh, I always feel sore and I'm running. As it is with deadlifts, you need to program this and dial it up slowly. You can't just go, okay, I used to be able to run 5Ks when I was 12, therefore I'll run 5Ks now. It doesn't work like that as much as you think it should. Like, oh yeah, the weight I deadlifted 10 years ago, I should be able to deadlift now if you haven't deadlifted in 10 years. Doesn't work like that either, right? So be smart with treadmills and running and things like that. But again, treadmills for me, they're up there. People don't want to hear it, but if you can combine your treadmill with some of this training, you're just going to be a better athlete. You're going to be healthier. You're going to live longer and better. And the motor improvements, the gait improvements for the Gen Pop, nothing beats some form of treadmill /running /walking /cardio training in general. It has to be S tier. It has to be. I almost want to put it in front of leg press, but I'm going to bias leg press a little bit more because I think that that is also very important for everyone in regards to resistance training of the legs. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there, but treadmill is really, really good. Bicep curl. Bicep curls are nice. Again, feels very Arnold Schwarzenegger like. I'm going to include like incline bicep curls, which is where you're kind of laying back on an incline bench and actually doing full range, bicep curl movements through there. Again, this is a really top tier exercise. Biceps, you could make an argument that how much do biceps contribute to deadlift, squat, bench? They're there. They contribute. I think, again, the strength overall is important to actually have in the arms and in those movements. I think bicep strength and bicep exercises are important for shoulder health as well too, and arm and elbow and, a lot of these things, forearms. I think they need to be... You can make a really good argument, though, that they're probably not as important as tricep overhead stuff because of the overhead positioning. You could make a really good argument, and I would listen to it. I'd also give you an argument that pull-ups are probably going to be more impactful, as are push-ups. More than military press, though. I'm harsh on military press because it is such a great strength exercise, like elite tier exercise for strength, but it's just so hard for gen pop, and I feel like it's weighing on my brain, that part. I'm gonna put bicep curl just below military press. I'm gonna do that because I included. Did I include seated pressing in this? I think I did. I definitely did. Yeah. Okay. Overhead pressing is important in general. I'm going to put biceps just behind it. An important exercise, an important staple of, and especially if you're doing bodybuilding, it's probably a lot higher. But in terms of general people, I do think it serves a very good purpose. A lot of my programs do have biceps. If they don't have biceps specific, it's because we're doing a hell of a lot of rowing and pull downs and other related pulling movements that use biceps to some degree. But specific bicep related training is also pretty important. So I would have it in the B tier for sure. Stair climber. Ooh. This is an interesting one. Stair climber. If we're going on the same reasoning that I said with treadmill about cardiovascular performance being a good indicator for how you are as an athlete and how you actually train overall, I think stair climber is pretty relevant. I think it's a nice way for people to actually work on hip flexors and work on the actual gait movement of stairs, which are an issue for people in older populations, older/newer to the gym populations or fall risk people. But I can't in good faith put it over a lot of these other things because I think working on strength in general is also going to help you get better at stairs, and you can do step ups and you can do other movements like that help with the strength. So I think I have to put stair climber a little bit lower. For me, I'll put stair climber down there. I don't think it's as impactful as all this other stuff. And I think there's way too many better alternatives than a stair climber. Yeah, I think that's a fair call. Bicycle machine, let's go. Yeah, bicycle machine, assault bike. We'll lump all that in together. Also good movements. Really good rehab related when you're dealing with, knee, leg injuries. Biceps are a great way to keep some cardio going. I'm going to put them immediately. I'm just thinking, I think they're in the same line as a stair climber. They're no better than, I think treadmill's more impactful cardiovascular wise. But if you wanted to do bicycle related stuff as a movement, I think it's better than a stair climber. Just because it's going to get blood flowing a little bit nicer. I guess barrier to entry, more people are likely to have a bike versus a stair climber. I think that's a fair point. I think I'll keep it there. Oh, bodyweight squats. Okay, well, bodyweight squats are fine, but I've kind of lumped that in with squats. So maybe I won't put in bodyweight squats. But if we were just going on bodyweight squats alone, bodyweight squats are... Oh, there we go. Bodyweight squats are pretty handy. rehab wise, I use a hell of a lot of bodyweight squats in terms of the older population and people coming back from surgery. But I've kind of lumped that in as squats in terms of like, I've lumped them all in together with squats. So I'm going to probably just leave that out and just include that in this exercise because I'm not putting bodyweight squats by itself above anything else. Burpees can be F. Fuck burpees. Nah, burpees are fine. I like the ability to get off the ground. I like the cardiovascular element to them. I think they serve a purpose in some very niche populations. I just think that the chance, like powerlifting wise, next to nothing. F is probably a fair call for burpees in terms of powerlifting. I don't think they serve too much purpose elsewhere. If you wanted to say that, overall general health, fitness standard, they serve a good purpose, they do. I just don't think that they contribute as much as people think they are. I think they're just hard movements. They get heart rate going because you're going up and down very quickly. Great cardiovascular movement. I can't think of any purpose where I would give someone a burpee for rehab. If they struggled getting up and down off the ground, there's a couple things I'd give them beforehand, and that'd be lunges, that'd be Turkish get-ups, there's a whole bunch of things I'd rather give someone than a burpee. It's a fine exercise. There's nothing wrong with it other than the fact that it sucks. But it's like, for me, I actually think this will probably be one of the lowest ones I give. I think this will be a C. I haven't found any time where I've actually programmed burpees for someone. Yeah, I'm going to put them in a low C. I don't think they're relevant to any of the strength stuff that we're talking about. I think they're relevant to rehab. They're low barrier entry, but I just think I'm going to put them down the bottom. Ooh, dips. Holy crap. Okay, dips are really good. Now, I've only just really restarted with dips. I haven't had dips in my program for a long time. I've just restarted some dips. They are killing my triceps and chest and shoulders in a good way. This needs to be actually a pretty high movement. I'm actually probably going to put this in an S tier, low S tier. The amount of strength and development you get out of a tricep and pecs in this deep position, especially if you include weighted dips with a belt and like some plates hooked up to the belt underneath you, is insane. The strength carryover to bench press is just remarkable. The way you can progress these, body weight, eccentrics, different the amount of weight on the belt. These are all time. These are a damn good exercise that I think actually get underdone in the powerlifting world. They're a tricky movement for people who are new to the sport or new to gym, new to anything like that. So I can understand why people wouldn't program some of these, especially for Gen Pop. But if you include things like bench dips, which are a bit more lower barrier entry, they're also very good exercise. So I think the utility of a chest dip has to be pretty high. Chest, tricep dip, whatever you want to call it, just dips. Dips are a very useful exercise for that engagement of the shoulders into that extension. A lot of people are really sticky in their shoulders when they get their arms back here. It feels a bit pinchy in the front of their shoulders sometimes. So it's a great way to actually expose them to that and get them to train out of that discomfort. So chest dips have to be an S tier movement for me. I think they're better than dumbbell shoulder press. Yep, and they're definitely better than incline dumbbell bench. So yeah, I think that's right. Chest press machine is also a damn good machine. A really good machine, a really good upper body accessory movement because again, similar to a bench, similar to what the leg press was for squats. When you start to fail on bench, sometimes it's no longer necessarily about the actual strength in the pecs and the triceps. It's just more you can't keep that form of pressure and setup anymore because you're just starting to get taxed neurologically. Chest press is a great way. It's a great way to start to increase the amount of total volume you're doing in terms of pressing, get a ridiculous pump in through the pecs, get a nice deep stretch in through the pecs, get tricep work going, and increase the total volume without needing to think as much about the technique as you do with bench press. Chest press definitely needs to be, for me, S tier as well too. The caveat is that some machines suck. You can't load them up that much. Some aren't that heavy. Some, anytime fitnesses and just your general gyms can really struggle to actually weight those up. But if you are lucky enough to have like a pin loaded one, a plate loaded one, yeah, chest presses are nice, and at any angle, a flat one or an incline one. I think for me, they're better than like dumbbell pressing. You could argue that the stability that you need with these is pretty useful too. It is, but I think in regards to improving bench press, this chest press machine is a really, really nice alternative to actually, yeah, to actually pick some more strength and more volume up through that movement. So I love chest press. Chin ups. Okay, chin ups probably need to sit here with pull ups. Arguably, chin ups. Arguably, a chin up is easier than a strict pull up. I think you can make that argument. I think you can make that argument. It's easier. Um, Different muscles, completely different muscles. Because you're a little bit more anterior focused, you're going to get a bit less of pure lat work, and you're actually going to get a little bit of bicep actually helping you too. So technically, it does make it easier to some degree. I think there's less carryover from a chin up to some of the upper body strength related demands that helps powerlifting. So I'll have it a little bit lower than a pull up for that reason. But again, a chin up, a weighted chin up, great exercise to actually increase that upper body pulling strength. Really nice for like scapular rehab, like actually getting that upward rotation of a scapula, and I guess scapular control is pretty unparalleled. So it's a very, very good exercise. Again, if you're doing any form of climbing training, like pull ups and chin ups have to be a staple as well too. I tend to program more pull-ups. I don't. I can't remember the last time I would have programmed chin-ups. I have, but it's been a while because I think I would prefer people to get more activation out of lats and get more that wide position because I think it helps and transfers a little bit better to bench press um, than the chin-ups do. Yeah, I think that's fair. Oh, crunches are here. Crunches are probably going to go in the same area as sit-ups are then. I'll put them just above sit-ups because crunches feel like they're a little bit easier. You don't need people sitting on your toes to actually make it work. Um, Weighted crunches, cable crunches, they're all fine. I've talked about this before. They're fine. Hanging leg raises for me, I'm biased, but I think that they actually give you more ab work than a crunch does. And last one's a dead hang. Dead hang. Dead hangs, I'm mixed opinions on. A lot of people tend to use dead hangs these days to stretch out their lower back. A lot of that's what a lot of people do is they'll hold onto a bar and then they'll kind of relax their torso and really let it kind of traction and stretch through their lower back. Some people say it feels great. Some people say it feels terrible. For me, it depends on the day. There is some really good benefit to dead hangs in regards to scapular control and just your upper body strength and holding where your shoulders are at the same time. I would say that they're a regression of a pull-up. I think that's probably a pretty fair thing to say is if you were using them for scapular control, then that would be a regression of the pull-up. So therefore, I would argue that it's probably not as good as a pull-up, but also because it's regression, it's not bad. They kind of go hand in hand in some degree, right? You can make an argument that technically, these two are related as are body weight squat and regular squat. For the sake of this, I'll say that they are slightly different. Because it's a regression, but because you also can't really change, you can't progress this that hard. You can change how long you hold. I guess theoretically you could dead hang with the belt and some plates hanging off as well too. But at that point, I don't know why you wouldn't just do pull-ups. For me, this needs to be low C. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. It's a very niche use rehab exercise for me. I don't give dead hangs to anyone. I know plenty of people who do them because they get that back stretch, like I mentioned. I just don't think they contribute anything to the strength like these other ones do. So, and then bodyweight squat's the last one there. So, look at that. There's a list. That's 70 minutes of rambling talking. I hope that didn't bore anyone too much. Maybe if people find that interesting, maybe they don't. I had fun with it. I think that that's my list there. There's plenty of other exercises there that aren't mentioned, as I said. Pendulum squat would be right up the top near leg press as well too. A hack squat would be right up there as well. A T-bar row, we included that in the single arm rows, but a T-bar row is one of my favorite exercises at the moment. I'm just trying to think of the other ones off the top of my head. There's no farmer's carries or anything around that. Farmer's carries are a good exercise for rehab and strength purposes as well too. I'd probably have them sitting somewhere in an A category. Is there any other exercises I can think of off the top of my head right now? There's no calves. Why are there no calves? Go figure. Even in this world, there's no calf raises. Calves are very important again too, depending on the context of what environment you're in with your training. Bodybuilding is obviously important. Powerlifting, you make an argument that because you don't actually have any form of dorsal plantar flexion sort of going on, that they're a little bit irrelevant. But I would still say, much like anything else, I think how your calves and feet and ankles moves very much impacts how your knees and hips move as well too. So I do program plenty of calf stuff. So if I had any calf stuff, I'd probably be putting that in somewhere around the B tier, and probably putting that in. You know what? It'd be somewhere in the middle B tier, low A tier. Because it's actually a very useful movement for the overall function of how your body, ankles, and feet move. But I hope you enjoyed that. I can't think of anything more at the moment, so I think that's all. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions about these movements, if you don't know how to do any and you want some advice, you want some coaching, you want anything related to these movements, if you're trying to actually get stronger or progress in powerlifting, let me know. Happy to help, happy to offer you some free advice and free tips. But essentially for now, that's me done. So have a great day.